Some future weapons concepts for the US Army were just presented at the Future Force Capabilities Conference. Among them were a few explosive chuckers, which pose some interesting implications for the infantry from the squad to battalion level. In this video, I'm going to quickly run through them and how they notionally fit into infantry structures. This is based on reporting done by soldiersystems.net, which I've linked in the description. And if you like this video, consider joining our Patreon to keep Battle Order going. The first platform is an enhanced 81mm mortar for airborne and air assault troops. The underlying problem is during parachute and helicopter assaults, there are relatively limited options for fire support. Towed 105mm and 155mm howitzers are available at the brigade level, division level in the future. But for the first few hours on the drop zone, fire support will most likely come from close air support, naval fires, and infantry mortars. Currently, each infantry battalion has a mortar platoon in its headquarters and headquarters company. This platoon has 4 mortar squads, which can serve either 120mm heavy or 81mm medium mortars. But individual squads can't serve both at the same time. When a unit is conducting dismounted operations, that is without motorized transport, they're limited to the 81s. The goal is to give initial entry airborne forces firepower and range equivalent to 120mm mortars at H-hour, rather than 4 hours after the initial jump as might be required with 120s. The proposed solution is a future battalion mortar system, which is an improved 81mm mortar mounted on an infantry squad vehicle or ISV. The ISV is highly air mobile, able to be airdropped, sling-loaded under a UH-60 Blackhawk, or loaded directly into a CH-47 Chinook. So the logic follows that anything mounted to it can be available in the first assault wave. To be fair, the Humvee also has most of these capabilities, but it's believed that the current 120mm isn't survivable enough due to immobility, not capable of consistently beating a 3-minute counter-battery requirement. The Army wants to introduce a lighter, enhanced 80mm mortar that matches or exceeds the range and lethality of current 120mm, while also increasing mobility and giving further options for man packing. Mount that system directly on an ISV with a quick detach sling system akin to the current trailer-mounted mortar stowage kit. Give that ISV the capability of carrying 69 rounds. Give it integrated digital fire control, and that's the concept as described. Based on a Photoshop of a 2020 ISV photo shoot, there seems to be enough space to seat an entire mortar squad. Right now, they're talking about replacing 120mm mortars in the motorized BCTs 1-for-1 with a new system, so 4 per infantry battalion. I'd imagine they'd also make the current gen 81mm mortars redundant as well, but I don't know if that's been stated. The next thing presented was a precision Grenadier system. If you remember back in the 90s, the US Army was looking at adopting something called the XM29 Objective Individual Combat Weapon, or OICW.
The US Army is experimenting with a bullet that can be fired around corners, travel a predetermined distance, and explode.
It was a 5.56 carbine with a 9.8-inch barrel and a 20mm grenade launcher mounted on top. This program was later split into the XM8 rifle program, cancelled in 2005, and the XM25 counter-defilade target engagement system, cancelled in 2018. The concept for the XM25 was to allow a Grenadier to input a distance into the projectile to airburst over an enemy in defilade. Basically troops in cover, in trenches, over a hill, that sort of thing. The current M320 grenade launchers used by the Army are capable of this, but precisely hitting troops in a trench with indirect fire would likely require more skill than bracketing with a direct fire airburst system. Keyholing a round through an opening in a bunker or a building would also probably be considerably easier with a direct fire system at range, potentially negating the need to conduct a risky maneuver against a fortified enemy. Technically, systems like the M203 underbarrel launcher could do this out to 125 meters, but human factors in combat might reduce this to fewer than 50 meters when done on the fly. The XM25 actually made it to the field testing stage and was in Objective MTOs in the 2010s. Objective MTOs are essentially the goal, organization, and equipment for a unit, and not necessarily what real units have. The intended scale of issue before the program's cancellation was 2 per rifle squad, or 18 per rifle company. But the XM25 had its own drawbacks too. In terms of weight, it would either double the load when compared to an M320 when carried in conjunction with a carbine, or make it impractical to carry a carbine altogether. The XM25 was also significantly bulkier than the M320. Although the M320 looks pretty chunky under an M4, it can be used in the standalone mode, and I've been told by multiple rangers that they've often employed it without the stock and sights and carried them in dump pouches or a holster, so considerably more convenient if requiring more training time. However, despite cancellation, the Army apparently still wants something like the XM25. The working title for the program is Precision Grenadier System. The PGS has not had a requirement published yet, so a system obviously doesn't exist, but they expect a requirement to be issued by as early as 2024. We can expect it to be similar to the XM25, a magazine-fed direct-fire airburst grenade launcher with a digital fire control system that can be shouldered like a carbine, but hopefully much lighter. Currently, Army rifle platoons have 3 rifle squads, each with 2 fire teams, in addition to a weapons squad and striker and light units. Each fire team has an M320 Grenadier. The concept they showed replaces one of the squad's M320s, so 3 per platoon and 9 per rifle company. Complementing the PGS and M320 would be an individual assault munition, which is envisioned as a replacement to all shoulder-launched munitions available to the squads. At present, there are 2 main disposable munitions: the bunker defeat munition for taking out fortifications or buildings, and the AT-4CS for taking out light armored vehicles like BMPs or BTRs. The XM919 individual assault munition would consolidate these 2 systems into a single system, taking away an unnecessary decision from the commander. The current BDM is also not rated for firing inside confined spaces like a building or a covered fighting position, reducing its utility during urban operations. The prospective XM919 would also improve capability in confined spaces. It's expected proposals will have to weigh less than 20 pounds, which when compared to the systems they're replacing, the AT-4CS weighs about 17 pounds and the BDM about 16 pounds. Expected scale of issue would be identical to the current issue shoulder launch munitions. The current doctrine is to give each of the squad's 2 riflemen an AT-4CS or BDM. And for now, it looks like that'll be the same for the IAM, not accounting for spares carried in the truck, but it's definitely not the sort of everyone gets one kind of weapon system that the old M72 Law was. I just want to thank our patrons for keeping Battle Order going. I recently added a new exclusive mini print for all patrons corporal and above, so consider joining them at the link in the description. And if you enjoyed this video on the Army's future, check out this video on the capabilities of their future heavy armored divisions. We'll see you over there.